Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host. It's Saturday afternoon, early evening here online. And I got to get going here a little bit on some things that I've been thinking about the last 24, 48 hours, as well as what just happened at the Moody Center in Austin, Texas, exercising some demons, in my opinion, for some home court demons with a 36-point win over West Virginia. The Longhorns now go to 16-8 on the year. It wasn't so much that they beat an 8-15, I think, West Virginia team. It's how they did it. The Longhorns absolutely throttled them, not just in the first half, but in the second half too. It was complete and utter dominance by the Longhorns. And like I said, I think it was exercising some demons. Dylan DeSue started off red hot in the first half. He was 5 for 5 at one point from three. Max Asmus lit fire too. So did Cyrese Hunter. The whole team really having a good day today at the Moody Center. All right, I want to go and talk a little bit about what's happening in Las Vegas. And I'm not talking about or what just happened in Las Vegas. I'm not talking necessarily about the big game tomorrow between the 49ers and the Chiefs. Everybody's going to be watching that. By the way, we are not going to have our regular Sunday night live stream like we do because most people will be watching the Super Bowl, of course. But I do want to say this. A couple things happened on Radio Row. For those unfamiliar with Radio Row, it's essentially where where big name players get thrown through the gauntlet of the different radio stations around the country. Well, two people that I saw in that were very interesting. One was Chris Sims. Chris Sims hosts a radio show, also has some stuff on broadcast television as well. But he actually was sitting there with Bijan Robinson at one point, and the two of them were seen putting up a hook 'em. Chris Sims has not been very outward about his time at the University of Texas. It was a mixed time for him, to be fair and honest. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, he and Major Applewhite were going back and forth. And Sims has since graduated went on to play some time in the NFL and has become a fairly important commentator in the NFL at this point in his career. And it's interesting to see now, in my opinion, that he is, had this acclaim, but he hasn't really said much about the University of Texas of late. So when I saw that photo of him and Bijan Robinson, both putting up the hook 'em together, it made me feel a little good. It's not been something that he's necessarily worn on his sleeve. People that are close to him remember a time when, they lost to Colorado and he was getting death threats from various fans. Somebody put his cell phone number on a message board. It was maybe my first time in this business realizing that things can go way too far on message boards and with communities. Chris Sims was a metaphor for how not to handle those sorts of situations. Not Chris Sims himself, but the people that cared so much about Texas football or thought they cared about Texas football, but were really more concerned with themselves, in my opinion. Look, I wish nothing but Chris Sims, nothing but the best. He was a exemplary teammate, in my opinion, from what I hear behind the scenes. Worked hard, et cetera, et cetera. Was he perfect? No, he wasn't perfect as a pro either. He's not perfect as a broadcaster. But I thought that photo with him and Bijan was connecting two different eras of Longhorn football. Both good guys, both elite national recruits coming out and chose the University of Texas from outside the state. Bijan from Tucson, Arizona, Chris Sims from Ramapo, New Jersey. And so I feel like that was a very healthy picture, I guess, that emerged from Radio Row. The second is Arch Manning, and he is always the topic of the conversation. And leave it to, after Steve Sarkisian's press conference on Wednesday, leave it to the New York Post, a tabloid newspaper, to start stirring up the idea that Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning are locked in a battle, and now that Quinn Ewers is definitely going to be the starter, that somehow that means there's a change in plans for Arch Manning. Well, Eli Manning, Arch's uncle, came out pretty strongly. If you haven't seen it or heard it, you should probably watch it. But the reality of it is he echoed the sentiments we've been saying privately and publicly. He's echoed the sentiments that Arch Manning has put forward as well. He said, Eli basically said, look, he's there. He chose Texas because he wanted to go to Texas. And Eli used his own background and upbringing as the idea behind this idea of just because someone is ahead of you doesn't mean you necessarily transfer. It's not, add just everything else is all about starting and going quick in life. It's not necessarily that way. And Arch Manning is playing the long game. And I mentioned this today on the message boards on Texas Football. Everything about the Mannings is about the long game. They're looking for the next 20 years, not the next 2 years. Okay. Now they want to make sure that that Arch is growing, becoming a better quarterback, getting stronger, going to be able to handle things on a personal level and on a professional level. But Eli Manning even said it. Look, I redshirted, then sat 1 year, and then played 3 years. Okay. Now I'm not saying Arch Manning is going to play 3 years at Texas, but it's perfectly reasonable for him to have played a little bit this year. Then he's going to play a little bit more next year. And then he's going to take over so long as Quinn is healthy all of this coming year. So my point being that I keep seeing national publications try to stir the pot. And it could be the New York Post or Skip Bayless or whoever wants to do that. But anybody that you talk to that actually is in the know and actually knows the Manning family or has talked to him around the Texas football program, they understand that, yes, and Eli admitted this, yes, he wants to get on the field. He's a competitor. Of course he does. At the same time, he's not going to, overstep and sit here and leave a program that he likes, a coach that he believes in Steve Sarkisian, and his quarterback tutelage, and an offense that fits his style of play. All of those things combined make all this chatter kind of, I don't want to say depressing, but disappointing from some folks that I think are trying to make a story into what it's not. And here I am on a Saturday afternoon reacting to it at some level, right? But I want to make sure that Texas fans are aware that Arch Manning's here, and I don't think he's going anywhere. And for us to continue to see, thumbnails on a video saying, where is Arch going to transfer to? Or a clickbait headline from someplace like the New York Post. It's disappointing, especially in a time, and I want to say this, it's playing on fans' fears, especially in a time where the transfer portal is so open. I mean, people do transfer. It is realistic for guys to go different places. But you don't, cause a 5-alarm fire just because you think there should be smoke. I mean, you don't ring that bell. And so I think that given the college football, the state of college football and what it's in with the transfer portal, it's exacerbating some of these issues as it relates to him and Arch Manning and what have you. But I am happy that at least Eli came out and said what he said, because it's yet another voice that we've heard that continues to echo the same thing over and over. And I think that people are going to have to understand that, yes, the transfer portal is meaningful and people will move. It doesn't mean that it applies to everyone in every situation. For example, Jalen Milroe was a Heisman candidate this year at Alabama. He doesn't necessarily fit Kalen DeBoer's offense, but he didn't go into the portal. Now, guys that want to catch balls, Amari Niblack and Isaiah Bond did. They may be situated differently. So just because there is a opportunity for the portal doesn't mean people necessarily are going to take it. I say that because I think that kind of plays into what I'm talking about and where we're at now with Chip Kelly leaving UCLA as head coach and going to Ohio State. That means that UCLA is going to have a batch of players that can jump into the portal. Who are they going to even hire for the head coach? It also deals with the guys at Michigan. We've mentioned this before, but earlier today, not only did their defensive line coach end up joining Jim Harbaugh with the Los Angeles Chargers, but now their defensive secondary coach has joined Jim Harbaugh with the Los Angeles Chargers. So it's going to be a whole new defensive staff for Michigan, which means what goes on there as it relates to the transfer portal. We'll see. Some guys will leave. Some guys will stay. It all depends on their personal fit and what they're trying to get out. Don't presume, we shouldn't be presumptuous that one or the other is going to happen. We have to wait and see, because guess what? The Arch Mannings, the Jalen Milrows are different than some guys who the guys in Arizona. They stayed. They're going to be different, and so you can't say one way or the other. And I hate to see things happen with Arch Manning. And I want to try to tie this together. Chris Sims and Arch Manning are the two, probably not the two highest recruited quarterbacks in the history of the University of Texas, because Vince Young would be in that consideration. He was the number one overall player in the country, as were Chris Sims and Arch Manning, in my opinion. But both of those guys have immense pressure because they're out of state and they have such high expectations on them, and they're coming to the state of Texas, which is this football-rich state. I don't want to see Texas fans rip, or not that he won't have a bad game or whatever. I don't want it to be this cautionary tale like I think it has been for Chris Sims to some degree. And I say all of that to mix it all around. Some people might actually attach Arch Manning's name to wanting to transfer that are Texas fans, and don't do that. Take a guy at his word and what he means. All right. Congrats again to the basketball team. That'll do it for this afternoon. Tomorrow morning, Jerry and Hamilton and I are going to try to go over what he's calling the 10 most wanted recruits for 2025, the class of 2025. But that'll actually start really processing here in the next week, in the next couple of months, as they bring in visitors, in March, and then official visitors over the summer as well. All right. For myself, Bobby Burton, this has been a quick update on Texas football. Hook 'em.